On the banks of the Danube River, boats recently arrived carrying uniquely dressed characters for a uniquely Hungarian event. The nation's largest carnival festival looks a lot different from the others we've seen this week, but the atmosphere is still one of celebration and commemoration of a centuries-old story that may or may not be true. There's a town in southern Hungary that was once occupied by the Ottoman Empire. According to theculturetrip.com, the legend goes that the townspeople who'd been forced to flee later dressed in frightening costumes and came back to scare their invaders away. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. But today, roughly 40,000 people arrive in the town of 20,000 this time of year to scare away winter and give spring a warm welcome. The festival lasts 6 days, and planning for the next one starts as soon as the current one ends. Peanut butter and chocolate, convertibles and sunsets, Fridays and awesome. Some things are just meant to be together. I'm Carl Azus for The World from A to Z, and we're thankful to be together with you today. For the first time in more than 50 years, a cyclone is approaching southeast Queensland, a state on the eastern coast of Australia. Its name is Alfred. It's a slow-moving storm that's expected to make landfall late Friday or early Saturday. When it does that, forecasters expect its sustained wind speeds will be around 50 miles per hour. That would make it the equivalent of a tropical storm in the Atlantic, but not as strong as a hurricane. Still, it's headed toward a populated area of several million people where systems like this are rare. They usually impact areas farther north in the tropics. So evacuations have been ordered, airports, public transportation, businesses and schools are closed. Damage is expected from strong and gusty winds, and Alfred's slow speed is a problem because it could dump extraordinary amounts of rain on eastern Australia, threatening major floods. Heavy waves were pounding the coast as we produced this show, and thousands of homes had already lost power as Alfred neared.
Word and knowledge. Who invented the metal detector in 1881? Alexander Graham Bell, Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, George Westinghouse. First developed in an attempt to save a president's life, the metal detector was an invention of Alexander Graham Bell.
On this date in world history. March 7th, 1965 became known as Bloody Sunday because of what happened in Selma, Alabama. Around 600 people were marching to Alabama's capital Montgomery seeking African American voting rights and protesting violence against black demonstrators. As they crossed Selma's Edmund Pettus Bridge, state troopers ordered them to disperse. Moments later, troopers advanced on the protesters with tear gas, clubs, and whips, injuring 17 people. The assault was caught on camera. It sparked dozens of nationwide protests and led to the Voting Rights Act, which President Lyndon Johnson signed into law 5 months later. March 7th was a big day for the telephone. Alexander Graham Bell was granted a patent for his invention on this day in 1876, and exactly 50 years later, the first phone call between London and New York was made with the help of radio.
Are you dreaming of white sandy beaches? It's not too late to snag some spring break deals. Expedia travel expert Melanie Fish says she's seeing some flights for as much as 40% lower than usual for the month of March. Places like New York to Puerto Rico, LA to Honolulu,
Atlanta to Orlando, Orlando being a top spring break destination, 70% lower than typical.
Here's the catch. You have to be flexible with your dates to score the best savings.
Thursday flights on average are about 17% cheaper than flying on peak days of the week.
Another tip? Fish says prices typically dip the last week of April. But what if you're beholden to the school year calendar?
Maybe consider a little road trip or even a staycation.
I'm Jen Sullivan.
What day is it? Today, March 7th, is National Cereal Day, a time to grab a spoon and a bowl and to fill it with something that's been a breakfast staple in America since the late 1800s.
Where in the world?
In terms of land area, this is one of the largest nations on Earth. It won its independence from Portugal in 1822, and Portuguese is its official language today. It has the largest population in South America. This is Brazil. Its capital is Brasilia, but its largest city is Sao Paulo.
In urban South America, one man's legacy is taking root. Elio da Silva has lived in Sao Paulo, Brazil for decades. He's not a native, but he's come to love this bustling concrete jungle. And he's showing that love with a decades-long project to transform part of the city into a linear park filled with greenery.
This was built by a madman, a visionary, a guy who wanted to leave a legacy for the city that welcomed him.
Da Silva began in 2003, after he and his wife walked through the then rundown and drug-ridden area.
This was an abandoned, degraded, dirty area, an example of the city of Sao Paulo. There were no trees here.
When he started, he didn't even have a permit. But that didn't stop him from buying seeds and sprouts with his own money and planting and planting and planting.
Over the last 21 years, I've planted an average of 2,000 a year, and that's 41,300 now.
It was a slow-growing project. He didn't see the fruits of his labor right away, but that didn't stop him from planting diligently. Folks called him crazy for taking on the colossal project, but eventually got on board. Some volunteers help with the project nowadays, but most of the work is still done by Da Silva himself. And locals are reaping the beautiful botanical benefits of his work. Da Silva's project has more benefits than just cleaning up an eyesore, though. Sao Paulo is the largest city in Latin America, with more than 11 million residents and a sprawling concrete metropolis. With so many people and industries, and so little plant life, air pollution is bound to rise. Sao Paulo ranks among the top 30 cities with the worst air quality in the world. Planting thousands of trees increases the oxygen in the surrounding area, providing cleaner air for the people. It'll be a few years before the park is at its oxygen-producing peak, but it's still making a small dent in the air quality problem. Da Silva is 73 now, but getting older isn't stopping his project. He plans to keep working until 50,000 trees are planted.
A program that's part of Ocean County Vocational Technical School is first on today's World of Viewers. Grunin Performing Arts Academy is where Mr. Maz's class is watching. Hello to our friends in Toms River, New Jersey. In the Tar Heel state of North Carolina, we see Miss Smith's class at Charles D. Owen High School. The war horses are charging in Black Mountain. And the town of Sahuarita is in the Grand Canyon state of Arizona. That's where you'll find Sahuarita Middle School, home of the Jaguars, in Miss Suskin's class. Emergency dispatchers get a wide assortment of calls. Most are serious, one was cute.
An emergency?
Emergency donut.
The story here is that a toddler in Oklahoma was playing with an old phone, but one that could still make emergency calls. Police say as long as a phone can work, it can do that. So the boy dialed 911 for dessert. Unfortunately for the dispatcher, he said he wouldn't share his donuts, but fortunately for the boy, police officers had a sweet response. They picked up a dozen donuts and delivered them to the toddler and his big brother, who were probably dunking on their parents for saying donut abuse technology. At Yeast, we can understand why a young do-it-all would get around to calling for the flower power of an excellent pastry whose cream is crispy and leaves us Tim hurtin' for something that truly takes the cake. Just fill my mind with donuts and my fried eyes start to glaze over. I'm Carl Azus. That's the world from A to Z. Have a totally sweet weekend, y'all. You mean the world to me.